Hello and welcome to the Media Show. I'm your host, Jack Houghton, and tonight a new opposition leader. But how did journalists cover the spill against Susan Lee? Well, many tried to turn an issue of competency and popularity into one of sexism.
You will have brought down the Liberal Party's first female leader. Does that weigh heavily on you?
What do you make of Susan Lee's performance, her treatment, including by her colleagues, and the prospect of the Liberal Party rolling their first female leader?
Bringing everyone together.
The party has an optical issue with women, especially given you've all just taken out your first and only woman leader.
And one Labor minister, Tanya Plibersek, turned that logic full circle in an interview, becoming the very sexism that Labor supposedly disavows, alleging that the only reason Angus Taylor was challenging Lee were because of her chromosomes.
It looks to me like in the modern Liberal Party, an incompetent bloke beats a woman any day of the week, and the only real qualification for leadership is XY chromosomes.
And of course, later in the show, we talk all things America with our star digital presenter, Gabriella Power. But first, the ABC's top figures were in Senate estimates this week defending a racist program which painted white Australians as dogs and spread conspiracy theories of chemical warfare being used against Indigenous people.
Dispossession, the only true crime white people don't love investigating. Government announces people with white saviour complex now eligible for NDIS. And all white Australians officially declared bankrupt over incalculable debt to mob.
Exactly what that show is designed to do, and we can all have a view on whether it achieved it or not, was to raise and make awareness of important issues. So,
Stop. How specifically? How do these attacks on white Australians, the only true crime white people don't love investigating? Sorry, can you please tell me how that is supposedly...
It's called satire.
This company is out of control and a blight on society. Your money is being spent on propaganda designed to divide us by race. And many of the slurs used in that show were simply attacks on people for the colour of their skin. Well, if Managing Director of the ABC, Hugh Marks, continues to defend this, then he must be replaced. And lawmakers need to stand up. Australians are sick of this racialised hatred and unhinged culture wars radicalising our youth. Joining me to discuss are Sky News contributors Kel Richards and James Bolt. Thanks for joining us on the desk. Now let's jump straight into it because Jacinta Nampijinpa Price prosecuted the ABC Managing Director Hugh Marks very effectively, in my opinion. That was a very brutal couple of minutes for him to have to, I guess, address the concerns from a prominent Indigenous woman that the ABC has published racialised hatred against a large population of Australians, people that have white heritage. Kel, let's bring you in. What do you think?
Well, if you look at the theme running through all her questions, the theme was very clear. Where's the balance? Right? And he kept saying, oh, well, these are things that worry some people, and so we're allowed to air these things. But where's the balance? He had no answer to where's the balance. There was no answer to how has this been dealt with more broadly. There is a problem. You and I have said before that Hugh Marks has clearly gone native. He's drunk the Kool-Aid. He's become part of the ABC. There's a problem when our billion-dollar investment out of our taxpayers' dollars is going to someone who cannot see the problems. He can only, if he appears in public, he's got one agenda: defend the ABC. He's got to do something better than just defending the ABC. He needs to do more than that. He needs to, well, we're sometimes right, we're sometimes wrong. This is one where we got it wrong, and he seems incapable of doing that.
James, does the satire defence work? Because you can't use that defence if you were to be making jokes on a taxpayer-funded broadcaster about somebody's race in any other race. So if you were to do it with somebody of Asian heritage, East Asian heritage, African heritage, satire wouldn't be a plausible defence for I'm the butt of the joke. The premise of the joke is based on an immutable characteristic that is the colour of your skin. And does the left risk putting itself in trouble, also incentivizing people from the hard right who now think it's okay to talk about race in a derogatory manner through the lens of satire. But does that as an argument work for you?
It doesn't work in a pub test. When we talk about, what can you joke about? What's satirical? What's not? I always just kind of flinch up. I love free speech. I love comedy. There's some things I find funny that other people would find offensive. There's some things I find funny that people aren't just going to be entertained by. But the idea is just when you bring in the pub test, when you're making people that are the butt of the joke pay for the content, that's when I fall down. Because if this show existed on any other network, I wouldn't care. If people wanted to watch it, go for it. It's not for me. It's not for us. It's not for, probably a whole lot of people. But I'm sure there is some market out there that want to see Tony Armstrong make jokes. But the idea when it's on the ABC is that people that are the butt of the joke or people that don't want to watch the content are the ones footing the bill at the end of the day. That's not fair.
No.
It's such a good point.
Can I say there's another thing? It's a dishonest defence because it wasn't just satirical. There were jokes, but there were claims, factual claims. There was a claim that the First Fleet deliberately spread smallpox to kill off the natives.
Chemical warfare
Now, that was a factual claim. That wasn't a joke. That wasn't satirical, and there is no historian or medical scientist on the face of the earth who accepts it.
They dressed the claim up as comedy, and then they quickly said, well, no, you can't criticise it because we're being satirical.
That's right.
Even though there was this undertone of truth.
It's dishonest to claim that sort of thing.
Very clever point. Well, let's move on, because I also played some grabs there of the Liberal spill. So Susan Lee, she's gone, and Angus Taylor is in there. Journalists have this obsession to see this contest only through the lens of gender. So I want to ask both of you, I guess starting with you, Kel, what you think of journalists such as Patricia Karvelis going on there and saying, well, you've taken out your first female politician, therefore that's some kind of negative, as opposed to looking at her for the content of her character, for her skill, for the polls, for the popularity, the policies, reducing that woman to the fact that she's a woman. What do you make of it?
2 points. The first is, that doesn't come from journalists. That initially came from the ALP. That's the ALP's talking point in order to deflect any attention from, is it going to get better? Will this man have better policies? They don't want anyone to look at that. So this is their cover-up. Now, when journalists run those lines as if they're their own lines, as if I've just thought of this, they are shilling for the ALP. They are running the talking points from ALP headquarters. Honest journalists.
It all gets a bit lazy, doesn't it?
It's really bad journalism. The second point is that the whole thrust is they haven't analysed this, designed to insult women. It says women don't vote on policy. Women have no brains. They just vote on whether it's a woman who's running or not. Yeah. Now, that's
what about all these Gen X women that have fled the party and this tokenism that, oh, well, if you put a woman in this party, then that alone will attract voters. And I'm sorry, but in this situation, women fled the Liberal Party. James, let's bring you in.
What I love about following this argument to its natural conclusion, all of the voters that the Liberal Party are losing to One Nation are rabid feminists. They're not leaving for anything else. They're just pure feminists that are fleeing to One Nation because they want to advance the feminist cause. Look, I would have some level of sympathy for the idea, how it would be interpreted as an attack on women. And I feel bad because she's had a terrible professional day. I thought she quit very graciously, but if Susan Lee was popular, maybe it's a conversation. But the fact is, it's been coming for weeks. There's the stench of death about it.
It's about numbers.
And she didn't have it. And so therefore, what's the alternative? That she's kept in the job that she's not performing well in and that no one wants her in for the pure fact that she's a woman?
They had a lineup. We had one of our polls that we ran on the website that you edit very well, James, had her as less popular than Donald Trump in Australia. And whatever the American polls are, right? In Australia, Donald Trump is universally unpopular. There is no coming back from that. At that point, when you have no policies, you've got no coherent platform, no penetration, for Tanya Plibersek to reduce that to chromosomes, I think it's when the left makes this mistake where they go so full circle with their ideological narrative that they end up becoming the sexists themselves. They end up actually pushing a rather offensive thought process that you are only what your gender is. And she should only be treated through the lens. Everything she does has to have this little qualifier that she's a woman on the end, as opposed to just saying whether policy is good or not, treating her as a human being.
But Plibersek basically doesn't understand it. She's undermining herself. I only win my electorate because I'm a woman. That's how I win my electorate. It's not because I'm intelligent or capable or put up good policies. I win it because
it's a good
that's
point.
it's a stupid line.
I'm sure she would be offended, I'm sure, by that suggestion. But if you were to follow the logic through to its natural conclusion, that's what you're saying. If it's a negative to replace a woman, then what does it say about putting a woman in there? And that's where the left, I think, makes this critical. It's a logical fallacy at its core, because it doesn't matter at its and also female voters, according to the polls, do not seem to care that Susan Lee is a woman or that Angus Taylor is a man. We'll see how they respond.
We're going to get into this coming up, but like the disconnect between the media class, right, and what actual people are thinking and what are their voting preferences. Can you imagine the list of, like, if we ranked it the top 200 things people care about? Cost of living, housing prices, immigration. It would take pages and pages of data.
Is my leader a man or a woman?
Before we get into leader, man, or woman.
It's the 9th iteration of data points that real people actually care about. But let's move on, because we've got a great grab of Alex Antic on with Sarah Ferguson on the ABC. Let's have a listen.
You said One Nation is successful because they have, quote, real people in their ranks. So is a private school alumni, a private schoolboy, an alumni of Sydney University and a Fulbright scholar to Oxford the right antidote to Pauline Hanson?
I did for a minute forget that I was on the ABC, so thank you for that culture wars type introduction. I don't accept that characterisation.
Well, hold on, let's just deal with that for a second. Were there or were there not rumours, questions being asked as to whether or not you have an interest in One Nation?
There were rumours about that. I'm certainly not not objecting to the rumours. What I'm saying is that characterisation of Angus as somehow being not a real Australian because he went to a private school and he was fortunate.
It's a question, it's not a characterisation.
Yeah, so James, very similar thing. You've got this characterisation, and also I love Alex Antic's quip back. He goes, "Oh, okay,
Forgotten I was on the ABC.
We're here for the culture wars.
Yes.
Got it. You want to play a little bit of class warfare. You want to knock him down because he has a private school education, and for some reason, Sarah Ferguson, you're characterising that as some immoral trait." But this is again where the left, and Sarah Ferguson is hard left. She isn't just left. She is the ABC's poster woman for hard left views. And for her to suggest that, oh, that's just a question, framing is important. She is intentionally going there and saying, you think that real people are the solution to One Nation's success. Well, he's not a real person.
Kel, you said just before that the Labor Party and journalists, like, you implied they're two different entities. This is the kind of stuff where they are just one and the same.
Yes,
I mean, the talking points are so similar, but like, I don't get why, this idea that like painting Angus Taylor as private school boy, Rhodes Scholar. I mean, the Labor Party, how many of them have had any real world experience apart from the staffer to MP to frontbencher pipeline? Like, that's never held any of them back. We were just watching in the green room, Malcolm Turnbull saying that he was a Rhodes Scholar and that Tony Abbott before him was a Rhodes Scholar. Rhodes Scholar didn't hold them back either. In fact, Tony Abbott was painted as an idiot by the left, and Rhodes Scholar was used as a defence to say, hey, actually he's so. The idea that being a Rhodes Scholar has some sort of like hoity-toity elitism that underdoes a Liberal Party candidate is not true and has never been true. I don't think Australians see the world like that. It's very egalitarian. We hate arrogance, but we don't tend to hate people that could come from a background of arrogance.
And it's the definition of real which is really stupid in this case. In the way the word real, let me tell you, in the English language is
used... Can you touch him or not?
With the word real, the negative wears the pants. Real is ruling out people who are phony, who overact, who pretend to be what they're not being. Real means someone who doesn't do that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you don't have a private school background. It doesn't mean you haven't been to university. It means you're not dishonest. You're not putting on a front. That's what real actually means. So this is playing with words. And by the way, a whole lot of the ABC staff have been to private schools and have been to university and have higher degrees. So attacking people on that basis is just absurd.
Yeah, and it's also it's policies, I think, which galvanise people. And Labor is bleeding people to One Nation who are working class voters. One Nation now holds the working class vote. So that question is probably better given to Anthony Albanese and his cabinet. It's actually not, it is a problem for the Liberal Party, but it's actually, when you look at the data, a fundamental problem for Labor. Labor used to be the party of the working class, but now the policies don't mar up. It's not about what school you went to. It's not about how much wealth you might inherit. people who are maybe doing it a bit tough, and I think we know there's a lot of people in that category, are looking at both major parties and saying there is no policy which I see a way of me getting out of this.
And it's also about communicating, because people who are real, who are not phony, who are not pretending, are clear and powerful in their communication. Whereas the current Prime Minister, he's had a lot of success, but he does talk like an inter-office memo. He has all the colour in his vocabulary of the Motor Traffic Act of 1984. So that's the man who can't communicate. That's the man who's not real. So it's a very silly
James Bond, I
complaint.
want to give you the final word on this.
Okay, completely different electorate, but let's not forget Donald Trump became, billionaire Donald Trump, silver spoon Donald Trump, golden toilet Donald Trump became the voice of the working class just because he hammered the issues over and over again.
Exactly.
Jobs are going away. There's no reason that Angus Taylor, with his background, can't become a voice of the working class if he hits the issues.
Immigration,
and
energy,
empathizes.
cost of living. I think he'll appeal. James Bolt, Kel Richards, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate your insights as always.